Monday comes early. This chapter closes. A new door opens. This is the second shift.
I got to the point financially that, I felt like we could think about retiring at some point. Investments were doing well enough that it was getting close, where it was like, okay, I'm wearing down from emergency medicine. I can feel that. My going into shifts was no longer fun. In fact, I kind of dreaded it. And frequently just kept asking myself, how much longer can I do this? Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Second Shift Podcast. My name is Bryan, Jepson.
And I'm Aaron Milledge.
We're the co-host of this podcast, and we're glad you joined us. This is episode number 1. So we're excited, and we're excited to move forward. But what we want to do today in this episode is to let you get to know us a little bit better. We're just going to give you a little bit of just a glimpse into our own second shifts and kind of how we got to where we are and why we're doing this podcast. And then we'll take a deep dive a little bit into something that's hopefully a little bit more interesting and, something that maybe can apply to you, our listeners. So anyway, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. We all have our second shift stories. We're going to explore those. I think that one of the things we're going to talk about today is, as a certified financial planner, I've watched hundreds of high achievers way too long to leave, right? Sticking along and just grinding it out until they reach a breaking point, right? And then fate forces their hand. But in this case, Bryan, you may be the first who left too early, maybe. Kind of the
I don't know about that. I'm not sure if it was too early, but yeah.
Pragmatist would agree with your plans.
I left before I broke. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, right. Okay. So we'll explore that. And in the spirit of full disclosure, we did record a pilot, and I think we were professional and composed. We explained everything clearly. And then AI told us
I thought it was
garbage.
Actually really good.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. And then it's like, no,
Yeah.
AI just, said, what grade did it give us, Aaron? Wasn't good.
I hesitate even saying that. It was I don't think it was
a C plus.
Yeah.
It was a C plus. And yeah, that's tough.
And I think the exact quote that justified that C plus was, "This is a LinkedIn post cosplaying as a podcast," which is, ironic, scary that a computer said we lacked human emotion, which is accurate and hilarious.
That's what made me the scariest. Is that made me the most scared about that is this computer understands emotion better than I do, and called me out on it.
Yeah.
So that's a scary thing.
So today, let's talk about maybe why you don't have a dramatic story, and why that in and of itself is the story. Because every high achieving individual, every physician, business owner, executive that we've worked with and left that identity defining career has a story, and it's something. There's always a kind of a catalyst. It's the climax of the narrative. The misdiagnosis, the loss of a spouse, the just debilitating depression. But in your case, you have sort of spreadsheets and a timeline. And so are you dead inside or just smarter than everyone?
I think maybe a little bit of both.
Let's back it up. Let's back it up. So your second shift, you've actually had multiple second shifts.
See, that's the problem is that, if I actually did a podcast that was defining my career, there would only be like 3 or 4 listeners, which in reality, that may be how this podcast is. But I know that my mom and dad will at least listen. So we'll at least have 2. They'll listen to every episode.
My parents will only listen if it's good, so we can't count on
Okay.
them.
Well, mine doesn't matter.
Okay, good.
So
That's good. But
we have at least 2.
Let's actually go to your story, because I think that your multiple second shifts, if we want to frame it that way, sort of paved the road, or served as the fertile ground for the real second shift. And so just kind of walk me through where you came from and these sort of side adventures you had along the way, and what they did for you, or how they helped you develop, or how they prepared you for where you are right now.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. So since this is our first podcast, most of our listeners don't know who we are. I am a emergency medicine physician. I am soon to retire. In fact, by the time this podcast is probably produced and published, it will be within weeks of when I retire from emergency medicine. I became a certified financial planner several years ago, and that's kind of the big second shift that maybe we're talking about. But leading up to that, finished residency, emergency medicine. That was the plan. No really other anticipation of it being any different than a typical emergency medicine career, I guess.
Why emergency medicine? Why not podiatry? Is that an option? Can you get that out of medical school?
You don't even need to go to medical school to be a podiatrist. So, so there you go.
But yeah, why an ER doc?
Well, so that is a good question. I think it fit my personality. I mean, every time you go through, I guess as a medical student, you enter it with, okay, well, this is what I think I might want to do. Some people have no clue what they want to do. I didn't really know either, but as you go through the process and you're learning and you're going through your rotations, you start to kind of try and figure out where you fit the best. And I think for me, emergency medicine, there's a couple of reasons. One, I was drawn to that because I don't like doing the same thing every day. I think that I needed to have that variety in my life. And I think some doctors are very, very good at being the very, very best at the one thing that they do. Right. I think a lot of really super subspecialty surgeons are like that, that very type A, I'm going to do this perfectly, which I appreciate in my surgeon, that they are like that. So emergency medicine is definitely more about, we're in the trenches. We're going to see whoever walks through the door. We have to know a little bit about everything, and being able to at least get to the point where we know what to do can either get them to the right place or treat them, immediately. So that appealed to me. So I think that was part of it, but also, going into it, you think, oh, it's nice because emergency medicine doesn't work as many hours in the hospital as a surgeon would, for example, or it shifts. We're not on call necessarily. So when we're home, we're home. And that appealed to me as well, is that, I could leave the hospital, I could go do my own thing. And then when I was working hard.
But you didn't stay. I mean, the emergency medicine, you deviated from that path at some point. You came back to it, but at some point you kind of wandered.
Yes, I did.
Why? And what? Because it sounds like a great gig, right? Like you hit all the highlights of like why you are you have a healthy level of curiosity. It sounds like, right? You don't want to do the same thing over and over, and it sounds like emergency medicine afforded you the ability to, when you're not practicing, to explore other kind of creative pursuits. But yet you kind of went off and did other things.
I did, and that was a pursuit that was, I guess that was a shift that I wasn't looking for necessarily. I mean, it came to me when my son was diagnosed with autism, honestly, so, and it was my second son, probably age 3 at the time of diagnosis. We had just recently moved to back home where extended family were. And so it was actually my second emergency medicine job. But, when your life gets derailed, there's a couple ways that you can handle it. And one is to just keep doing what you're doing, kind of stay on the path and let other people, kind of be the experts for you. And I guess that's not really my personality either. So once I guess I'm kind of a fixer. And once we got that diagnosis, and we're trying to just deal with that as parents. My knee jerk reaction is, let's go solve this problem. And so what that led to ultimately is I started researching and looking around and saying, okay, what is autism? How is there a cure? Is there something that can be done? Is there a treatment? And keep in mind, this was 25 years ago. And less was known about it then than is now, and less options were available. But my wife and I dove headfirst into trying to understand it and what we could do for our son. One thing led to another. I started learning some integrative medicine related to it. I opened up a part-time clinic while I was still in the emergency room, that grew and led to I guess, a little bit of reputation. And then I was recruited to go be part of a multidisciplinary clinic in autism in Texas, and so that was and I left emergency medicine at that point.
I think diving head first is an understatement, or it doesn't capture the commitment and work you did. Right, you're a published author on the subject, and so you take this very personal experience, this very personal sort of transformative circumstance, and it reorients your professional direction. You end up at this clinic in Texas. Why aren't you there now?
Also, a very great question, and I've tried to analyze it, and I've explained it to different people in different ways, honestly, because I think that there are different reasons. The initial catalyst on that, the superficial catalyst maybe, is that I was 24/7 autism. And if you think about my personality and why I went into emergency medicine, it's not to be 24/7 anything. And so, in the clinic, I was seeing the same stories, essentially, different nuances, but the same families over and over again in crisis mode with a devastating diagnosis and an unknown future.
Well, and I guess as a fixer, this isn't where here's the solution, here's the protocol, take this pill once every 24 hours and call me in the morning. There's none of that. And so as a fixer, did it chafe against your sort of natural, what's in your DNA?
It did, absolutely. And because we were trying to figure that out, that was part of the purpose of that clinic, is to help to create protocols and to create, as evidence-based as possible with a diagnosis that has so much, that's such a spectrum and has so many variables. And we were trying to create that. Ultimately, so here we are in this process, all the while trying to kind of come to terms with having it in our own family when our son was still young. And so what would anyone in that situation naturally do? Adopt another son with autism that's nonverbal. Of course, that's what we did. So that's not, I obviously being facetious there, but that added a whole other element of stress to just to our family life. And it got to the point where I needed to step away from that for family sanity, personal sanity, probably, as a fixer in an unfixable condition with unknown protocols and trying to sort things out. and and financially it was not a very good move either, right? So you don't make emergency medicine physician salary when you're opening up a nonprofit clinic that's cash based for special needs. And so and realizing that now I had two children that I was going to need to provide for their lifetimes, not just mine. Part of it was a financial decision. Just going back, part of it was just going back to what I know. I actually, I went back to emergency medicine because it was less stressful than an autism clinic. And so,
Why?
but then,
what does that
well,
mean?
and to get to your other, where you were starting with there, I think as a fixer in a condition that, because when you were first diagnosed, or when my son was first diagnosed, our knee jerk reaction is, we're going to fix it. We're going to be sure that, he's going to be fine. And we're going to solve this problem. And so both my wife and I dove in. In fact, to be very honest, she was way ahead of me in terms of, we're solving this. And I was at first just saying, okay, well, we're going to accept him and we're going to love him. And, but she was, no, we're solving this. And so, she was looking at every avenue that was available at the time and just immediately started it. And some of it I was extremely skeptical about from the very beginning. She had to convince me to even look at it. But once I started looking at it, I could see that there was at least some validity to the theories and the various protocols, and I could understand it biochemically and from a medical point of view. And that's when I started getting involved and getting into it. But the more patients that I saw and the more families that I dealt with, and I was sitting there with this complicated protocols, a variety of different types of things. Some kids were responding and doing well. Some kids were not. It was hard to know which, if any, of the things that I was offering them was the reason for that. Because again, so many variables, so many things going on. And it became more and more uncomfortable, where it was like, okay, am I helping them? I'm charging them money. I tried to keep it as low as I could and still pay our bills. But am I helping them? Because they're paying out of pocket. This is not
Right. Yeah.
medical covered. So am I helping them? And how do I know I'm helping them? And, so there was that disconnect emotionally for me as well. And I think that also was part of the stress and what was wearing me down. But also, when you're meeting people like that on that personal level, that is living your story, and stressed parents, kids who are in many cases in pain and not able to communicate, and it's emotionally draining as well, and it's harder to have the right balance for my own family, if I couldn't recharge somewhat at work.
Because you were living this reality at home, at work. There was no escaping
Right.
the struggle. But I mean, you had sort of the presence of mind to kind of take inventory of what was happening at home, at work, before it reached full on existential crisis, right? And that's you sort of
Right.
hit on it. Like there's an emotional component that I'm drained from. There's a financial component that's at play with caring for children with special needs, and so that brought you back to emergency medicine, where I assume that despite the chaos of the emergency room, as a trained emergency medicine physician, you could get your arms around the problem, which is materially different than the autism.
I mean, that's my comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's my comfort zone.
Yeah.
The emergency room is my comfort zone, and autism was not my comfort zone. I went into it because I wanted to play a role in that and help other families as we were going through it, and as we were going through it as well. But almost the opposite kind of medical care than what you provide in the ER.
Yeah.
In the ER, there are answers. I mean, you don't always see the end result of the things that you do because it's a short interaction, but there are typically answers that I can provide somebody and say, okay, here's what you need to do next, or this is your diagnosis, or this is the medication that will help you get better, or whatever. Autism is not like that.
You reached a level of expertise and, acclaim, for lack of a better word, in sort of the autism treatment and protocol and just research, especially, like you said, that you're sort of on the bleeding edge of where we are now with what we understand about autism, and you left it. And so, was there a piece of you that felt like you were surrendering? You were, I guess, selling out, like you were leaving this high calling, and going back to kind of the comfort zone of emergency medicine.
Absolutely. I mean, I felt guilty about it for sure. I felt guilty about it. And the reason that I did is that there aren't enough people like me, like I was, that were providing the demand, meeting the demand for the number of families, and especially people that actually understood them on a personal level. There were some other doctors doing it, and they're great and wonderful, and many of them had their own connections to special needs, which is what drove them to that as well. But not everybody, and so I absolutely felt guilty leaving, and I had to come to terms with that and say, okay, but I need to put my family first.
Absolutely, and I want to. The guilt is an interesting point, because I wonder, in your time since your departure from that position, how many families have you interfaced with informally, or just sort of brushing by, where you have been able to just impart some sort of help or wisdom or guidance to them? Because I have, you've helped me personally, again, in this sort of based off of your experience. And so I'm just curious, like, have you ever thought about how many people indirectly or tangentially that you've helped, even though you're not officially in that capacity anymore?
It's hard to quantify it. I mean, I did write a book that at the time was, I think helpful, and a lot of people read it in the situation. It's old now, I mean, I don't know that. I mean, I tried to do a lot of the current research at the time and review that, but that was 20 years ago. And so I'm not sure, there's a lot of stuff I think that is in there that may still be useful, but it's not as relevant, I think, at this time. So I'm not sure how much that's helping anybody at this point, but I still do. I think the most direct way to answer that is when I'm in the emergency department and I see kids with autism there, I treat those families probably differently than my colleagues and my staff. And I'm an advocate from the very beginning, that when people are saying, blah, 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 or complaining that the kid is being loud or whatever, it's just like, you guys have no clue what they're going through. So just take a step back, and that I've been able to continue to do, and then just peripherally, as you meet people on the street, or you kind of become part of a extended family, I would say, as parents and families with special needs, that you don't even almost need to communicate other than just a nod.
Yeah.
That you get it, that you understand it, what they're going through. I have had the opportunity to connect with a few of my old patients that are now adults, some of them in the financial planning world, and sometimes just, people saw me on Facebook or whatever and just reached out. And that's very gratifying, because, they're always very thankful and for the effort that we did back then. And it's fun to see, some of the kids have done really well and are doing really well as adults, and some are still struggling. So,
But you never just surrendered that identity. as an
No.
advocate or a in that community. You never surrendered that, even with the layers of guilt, you know, right or wrong that you kind of self-imposed. You never surrendered, that badge.
No, and I don't think I could if I tried. I mean, once if it's in your family, I will always be honored to be special needs dad. I mean, it's a tribe, and unfortunately, a growing tribe, and unfortunately, a tribe that most people don't understand very well. And so, yeah, it's absolutely part of me, and will always be.
So we have this pivot again, personal, professional. These stresses. You left before the crisis really hit. You're back to emergency medicine. How long did that last, and how did that story change? And I guess connect the dots for me of how you're now a
Yeah.
financial planner.
So I came out of residency in 1998. Shows you my age. But 1998, I came out of residency. I started my part-time clinic in autism, I think I'm trying to remember, maybe 2003 or four. And then I went full-time autism in 2006. And then I did that full-time for 5 years before I went back into emergency medicine. So, essentially back in emergency medicine around 2011. And I'm just put in my notice to be done with clinical medicine. And so that's another 14, 15 years
Yep.
after that second. Is that my third shift now? I can't remember, but that other back to emergency medicine. So I've been back at it for quite some time. Um, how did I get to be a financial planner? I could see the writing on the wall for me. Being as emergency medicine is hard to become old at doing. You're in the trenches. You're doing rotating shifts, night shifts, weekends, holidays. It's stressful. There's ever increasing volume of patients. Patients are often demanding. We're seeing them at their worst frequently. And to be fair, in their hardest moments, which is an honor, but also a stress, and it can wear you down over time. And so for me, I got to the point financially, we're able to catch up enough that I felt like we could think about retiring at some point. Investments were doing well enough that it was getting close, where it was like, okay, I'm wearing down from emergency medicine. I can feel that. My going into shifts was no longer fun. In fact, I kind of dreaded it. And frequently just kept asking myself, how much longer? How much longer? How much longer can I do this? And
like dreading, point, like I don't want to go to work, or like I'm like panic attack, sort of like this is physiologically affecting me.
I mean, I wouldn't say full blown panic attack, but definitely there was some physiological changes there for sure. I mean, mostly dreading. I just, like, you're driving to work and you're just going, I just got to get through this shift. And which is not a fun way to approach a shift or your job, is just get me through this day kind of thing before I even started it. But that even became a little bit more profound, where it was, my heart started racing before I even got there. Not like panic, I can't do it, but this kind of sucks. And so that's how it was for me. And it did grow to the point where, cause I just dealt with that. I think lots of doctors probably feel that, and lots of people feel that in their jobs. I just dealt with that. I was probably dealing with that for several years. I think COVID hit, made it all worse. And there's reasons for that, I don't know if we want to get into that today, or we can probably do that at another time. but just in terms of the administrative decisions and the political climate and just patient interaction, plus layered on top of that with the fear for our own health, that we didn't know what was going to happen. So that kind of made it worse. So, but I was getting close enough financially that I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And at that point, I didn't really have a plan about what would happen afterwards. I just wanted to be done. But then, November 2021 happened and the market started crashing. And I realized, man, this is going to set me back. It's going to set me back by several years.
Yeah. So 2021, I mean, that was kind of the reset for you. You've replenished the stores, so to speak, back in emergency medicine. You have, these other sort of personal costs for full-time care, all these things. You've managed to catch back up. You lose some years of freedom, right? The runway has been decreased, as it were. I would say that's when most people either break or they begrudgingly accept their lot in life and say the panic attacks and the depression and the I hate my job, like that's just a feature of my current reality, and I'm going to suck it up and deal with it. But you didn't do that, right? Like you went to Hawaii, I think, right? Like we had deep conversations with the wife
that AI hated.
Yes, yeah, we hated that story. The machine did not like that segue. But I think it's important because it highlights a couple of things in my mind. One, there's a very pragmatic approach, right? Like you're very systematic, and I don't know if that's nature or nurture through the years of being an emergency physician. But
I think it's your nature and nurture of growing up the way I grew up. I mean, I get that from my parents for sure.
And so it showed, like we just talked through the story, and it shows that you reckon before things get to crisis mode, before you let the situation dictate your actions or overwhelm your emotions. There's some element of planning and deliberate kind of thought experimentation that's going on, right? And I think that's where you're going with the 2021 narrative. But I'll let you explain that one.
Well, I mean, it's fairly simple. It's like, okay, I thought I was going to be able to retire in a year, and now it's going to be who knows how long, because I got to wait for this market to recover, because I don't want to retire when market's down and have to sell all my assets because maybe they won't last. And so then it became feeling a lot more like panic mode, where it's like, I thought I was done and now I'm not. And but I realized that I had options. I didn't need a physician's salary. I just wanted to delay taking away from my investments.
How did you know the options? Like, had you done the math ahead of time?
Yeah, I've always been interested in finance and financial planning and personal finance study and all that kind of stuff. So I've been doing that. That's been just an interest of mine for 20 plus years. Now, a lot of it was set to the side,
Sure.
At least a lot of the super active stuff when autism took the place of that. But it was always in my head, and it was like, okay, I have some choices, or I can create some choices. And like you said, you can either just succumb to your situation, or you can create options for yourself. And I've always been somebody that just was not afraid to create options. And I think a lot of people, that's what keeps them from doing it, is just fear of failure. And where, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm not going to step out of my comfort zone because they're afraid that it's not going to work out like they wanted it to. I haven't really ever had that, or at least not to I'm sure I have it some, but not to the degree that it would hold me back from trying stuff.
Have you run across other physicians that have that fear of, I mean, I know in obviously, like, being a doctor is sort of a no-fail situation, but outside of, they can't even imagine a life outside of doctor in front of their name because it may introduce the prospect of failure, and therefore they can't even plan, they can't even ideate a future outside of medicine because of that.
Yeah.
fear.
Absolutely. In fact, I think was one of the spark plug for this podcast, is because, the more that you meet people in my stage of life, that are high impact, that took a lot of effort to get to a different, to get to this place in life, I think the more fear there is of stepping away from that. So I think that's a driving force why a lot of people stay in medicine too long, or beyond their beyond where they're no longer happy doing it. It's fear of doing something else, um, fear of failure, whether it's running out of money or just losing your identity, or whatever it is. I think that's a lot of why people just stay in their comfort zone, even if they don't like their comfort zone.
And you have slayed those dragons. You have conquered the fears, and it led you to finance.
Yeah. So, I mean, you alluded to a story in Hawaii. The short version of that, AI, thank you. The short version of that is that I was on vacation. This was February of 2022. So this is after just kind of emerging a little bit from COVID, still deep in the financial crash. In fact, worse into the financial crash at that point, because Ukraine war had started, and everything was really hit the fan. And it's like, okay, well, what are my choices? My choices are keep doing what I'm doing, get to the breaking point probably, and who knows how long I'll last, and hope that something happens good before then. So that's one choice. The other choice was pick a non-clinical medical career, just do something different within medicine. But I was tired enough with the whole system in medicine that I just said, what could be my third choice? And that third choice was, let's look, what would I do if I wasn't a doctor?
Mm.
How do I move out of that whole paradigm and maybe try something else? Why not?
That still
Let's see
satisfies
what.
the things you like,
Yeah.
your curiosity, kind of these layered elements of you like doing things and not a singular focus or discipline or repetitive tasks.
Yeah. So I was sitting there and I said, well, had I not been a doctor, I really like finance. I probably would have done something within that, or I could have done something within that and been happy. And at that point, I just made a conscious decision that let's explore it. Worst case scenario, I'll become a better investor. And so, but I want to dive in deep, and because that's also my personality, is before I do anything, I want to kind of feel like I understand what I'm doing the best that I can. And so, I called that afternoon, I called several master's programs and signed up for one, to get a master's in finance, without really knowing where it was going to lead me. So the next 2 months later, I was a master's in finance student, and just like, okay, well, that was a shift. Because all of my cohort were my kids' age. And so that was interesting and fun. I loved it. Um, and then as I kind of figured out, okay, well, within finance, what do I want to do, or what could I actually do as that could bring some income and that would provide me, kind of, give me the things that I'm looking for, like you already mentioned, something that would be interesting, and I could interact with people, and I could still help them out, and I could be intellectually challenged and all that kind of stuff. Financial planning became, it was clear that was the right fit for me.
So what was, and maybe these aren't mutually exclusive, but again, I go back to when hard times hit, the natural response is to not go do harder things, right? And so was the just your realization that if you stayed in medicine, that you were going to reach a breaking point? Was that the highest motivator? Was it the desire to create optionality? Was it natural curiosity? Was it a blend of everything? What rolls you out of bed in the morning, day after day, to effectively change your career versus just hitting the easy button and slogging it out in the trenches of the ER?
Well, it's an interesting way you phrase that, because that was my question to myself. What gets me out of bed in the morning? And it's not going into the ER, and it's not thinking about, okay, I'm going to go do a non-clinical career somewhere and be an expert witness or whatever. For some people that's great, and I think it's awesome. Just wasn't for me. And what got me out of bed in the morning was looking at the stock market, investing, learning about stuff like that, learning about options or whatever. I mean, just that was a good, safe distraction, I think, a relevant distraction, but a distraction from medicine.
And you knew that you don't, even though you sent in your notice 3 weeks ago, and you'll never, you're not surrendering the work or the time or the experience of a career as a physician. This is not something you're just hanging the old white coat, if you did wear a white coat, on the coat rack and leaving it there. All of the things that you've lived as a physician, they're integral to you, right? They're a formative part of who you are. You're dismissive of that, but yet how do you reconcile that with the fact that you're looking at the fact that you'll never walk into an ER as a practicing physician anymore?
It's a weird feeling. I'll say that. I've been a doctor for 30 plus years, and that's still probably my primary work identity, even though I've been a financial planner, and that's what I'm continuing to doing in full time, doing that now. And added on top of that to kind of add on to the original special needs story as a special needs planner, so I've added that element. The reason why I'm okay with that is that, like you said, it's all part of who I am. And I think part of that experience helps other families, so as a financial planner, it actually, my experience both in special needs and as a physician kind of informs my own style as a financial planner, and I can relate and empathize with most of my clients who are physicians and special needs families. So it helps me as a financial planner, but it's still a little weird. It's a little weird, to say I'm no longer and even saying it out loud is a little hard.
Yeah.
I'm a retired physician.
Yeah.
That's a little weird. And, and sometimes I still feel like I need to lead with that. Like if somebody asks me what I do, I'm a semi-retired physician and a financial planner, as opposed to, well, I'm a full-time financial planner, and I happen to maybe.
I think that would be an interesting topic to deconstruct as you make the full leap and complete that. I think that would be a recurring thing that we run into of kind of the social element of who we are around other people and how much value internally we place on that. Do we fill our tank up by the fact that I get to say I am X in front of a crowd of people? I get to be the coolest dad at the school assembly. I think that's a very interesting and worthwhile topic to tease out, and certainly we'll see that evolve as you get nearer to the full-time leaving of medicine. Are you ready for?
I think I'll give you one interjection there. I think part of that is, so what's my new identity? So my old identity is Dr. Jepson, and that's just been a natural identity that's happened every time I walk into the doors of whatever emergency department I'm working in. I'm now Dr. Jepson. My new identity is Bryan Jepson, MD, CFP, CHSNC, which is a special needs certificate, financial educator, blogger, podcaster now. That is an identity that requires some putting yourself out there a little bit, right? To make that successful. So you're putting yourself out there, so I think a lot of that is maybe the discomfort, and the identity shift is not only what's my identity, but how do I define that identity?
Well,
Because as a doctor, it's defined for you.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit on. I mean, this is emergence, right? This is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like the Bryan Jepson holistic guy that I've gotten to know and work with is all of these pieces and parts and experiences and identities combined into the Bryan Jepson today. I think make you extremely valuable to obviously the families you serve, your colleagues, but it's we can't exclusively attribute that to the fact that, well, he was a doctor or he is a CFP. It's all of the interplay of these identities, these little tiny hats you wear all at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it's I think that's again why we want to do this podcast, is because a lot of people are in the same shoes, right? They're in the same shoes, and they're facing that decision, whether it's a crisis or not. I don't want to define it as a crisis. It doesn't have to be. I mean, but it's a decision about, okay, well, what's next for me? I have a lifetime of experience built up into this package, and how do I now maintain value, meaning, joy, in moving that package into a new environment? And that's not easy, and not a lot of people talk about it, and which is why we're not just doing another financial planning podcast. It's really more about, okay, let's do a retirement identity impact podcast that can help people navigate that inevitable challenge of life. And it's harder for people that have high impact careers.
Yeah, we're not interested about recovering from career trauma. I think we're all about preventing it, right? And going through taking the kind of collective wisdom of these experiences and pattern matching it to our own life stage and where we are. Well, thank you, Bryan. I think that kicked us off well. Are you ready for 3 questions? 3 unprepared, candid questions.
These are punch in the face questions.
These are punch in the face.
Right? You're going to punch me in the face.
Yep. Okay.
And according to AI, according to our AI coach, if we're still friends by the end of this, we have to cancel the podcast.
That's right. Absolutely. So we're going to hold each other to that. Okay. So let's start with your son's diagnosis. Okay. It's, to me, as the listener here, maybe taught you that medicine in the strictest sense can't fix everything. Did that in any way make leaving easier or harder for you? Leaving medicine at large? Easier. Okay. You don't have to explain.
Okay. Are these one just simple, easier, harder?
Yep. And it's my discretion
how we're doing
if we dig deeper.
Okay. Fair enough.
Do you feel like a fraud without a breaking point?
Do I feel like a fraud not having had a breaking point? What do you mean? What kind of a fraud in what sense?
Well, you never reached that
existential... why should I have made a change because I didn't really have to?
You didn't find rock bottom. You weren't your wife didn't find you with a bottle of Chardonnay in the bathtub reflecting
sucking my thumb.
Yeah, reflecting on your choices in life. Like, you never broke. What about the people that do have some trauma that did reach a breaking point? Do you feel like a fraud when you...
Do I feel like a fraud? The answer is no, I don't feel like a fraud. But what I hope to be able to do is, and I don't want to set myself up as some grand example, but what I hope to be able to do is prevent more of those, or help people prevent in themselves some of their own breaking point, because I don't think you have to have one. I think if you can sense it's coming, start, create options. In fact, create options before it comes, because if it doesn't come, no harm done. But if you're feeling the breaking point, then um, you have an exit.
Okay. Last
And so,
question.
so I'm answer to that is no. Don't feel like a fraud. Hopefully, I can be a Sherpa.
Yeah, no, and to be fair, that was the correct answer, because remember, we're about preventing career trauma.
Right.
So you were the example. Very good. A plus. So last question.
We'll see about that. We'll see how
We'll see how the
thinks.
the LLM grades us. You left medicine before you got to the point of hating it. In the 2 a.m. moments where you're staring at the ceiling, do you ever wonder if you really loved it in the first place?
No, because I know, I don't think it was the wrong career choice for me. I went into it because I thought it was intellectually fascinating, and it was. It was stimulating. It brought a lot of reinforcement. It kept me engaged. The other reason I went into it is because it would allow me to help people, and it did. Um, I think that there were plenty of times where that compassion fatigue was very high, and I didn't. That's when I look back and say, okay, it would have been easier to do something else. But I think it was just the right time for me to leave. I think that for me, I don't regret making that choice. So if old doctors like myself get asked this all the time, would you do it again? And if a resident came up, or a kid that going into medical school, would you do it again? I think I would have a little bit more wisdom to tell them and say, okay, there are pros and cons, and there are easier lives that you can forge if there's easier ways to make money. And but if you really want to do it for the reasons that I just described, there's no better career. So how's that?
I'm going to take that as a yes. There was a point in your life that you loved it, but you have the benefit of years of experience and gray hair to temper that sort of adolescent twitterpation with the realities of the toll that specifically emergency medicine takes on the whole person concept, mentally, spiritually, physically, interpersonal relationships. There's a lot to weigh there.
Yeah, it's a tough career, and there are definitely easier ways to go about it. But just like any hard thing that I've ever done in my life, including being a parent with children with special needs, you can see how it's molded you, right? And so it's hard to say I never loved it, or I regret doing it, or anything, because it's part of me, and it's part of what made me. And so that's why it's hard for me to say I never loved medicine. That's not true. I mean, I did. There was a lot about it that I liked. There's a lot about it that was really hard, and that I got to the point where I needed to, or just wanted to do something different.
And I think we'll hear that refrain from the other physicians we speak to. I hope we do, and we'll draw out with the punch in the face questions, and pull on that common thread. So, Bryan, I hope that when we ask AI to review this podcast, that we get a passing grade. But for closing off on the pilot, I'll leave the honors up to you, sir.
Well, I appreciate the conversation, and as begrudgingly as I will admit it, I think AI was right, and this was a little bit deeper and a little bit better, and our goal for this podcast is really not to just kind of the LinkedIn stories. It's really, let's get a little bit deeper. Let's try and understand the reasons behind things. Let's hear people's stories, and learn how they overcame their own challenges. And everybody will have a different one. Everybody will have a little bit different reason why they went into their second shift and timing of that. And I'm excited about interviewing people. I mean, what we're hoping to do is interview a lot of people who have either been through that or facing that, or can give us words of wisdom or express their anxieties or whatever it is, so that the rest of us who are listening to this can learn from it and share that experiences. We hope that you'll also reach out to us. Send us questions, send us comments. We want to make it better. We want to make it useful. And so, yeah, let's interact. Let's make it the best that we can. I look forward to it. I would look forward to hearing your story, Aaron. I can't wait to do some punch in the face questions to you.
I can't wait either.
And we'll go for it.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Next time.
The work you did mattered, and you're not done. Welcome to What's Next.
Thank you for listening to The Second Shift. If this conversation landed with you, please download our free guide called The Second Shift Blueprint. 5 questions you and your partner should discuss before any major transition. Get it at secondshiftpodcast.com. That's number 2 ndshiftpodcast.com. And if you're approaching a transition and want to talk through the financial strategy, we offer a complimentary 30-minute Second Shift audit. Details are at secondshiftpodcast.com/audit. Join us next week for another great episode. And remember, your life and identity doesn't end with retirement. It's just entering its second shift. The content shared in this podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered personal financial advice. You should always consult with a financial professional to determine what is appropriate for your individual circumstances.